Imagine your body as a 24-hour symphony. Every instrument, every note, perfectly timed. Cortisol, often called the stress hormone, is like a powerful drumbeat in that orchestra. When it's in rhythm, it keeps you energized during the day and allows your body to rest at night. But when that beat gets too loud, too fast, or continues when it shouldn't, stay away from processed foods. So the whole performance is restless, fat storage increases, and inflammation quietly rises. Now, here's the truth many people overlook. The single biggest mistake most of us make is allowing cortisol to stay elevated at night. You might think of cortisol as a daytime hormone, and it is. But modern life has turned our nights into a battlefield of stress signals. Blue light from screens, late night caffeine, heavy meals, scrolling through stressful news feeds, all of these send a very clear message to your brain. Stay alert, there's danger. And your body responds exactly as it would in the wild. It holds onto energy. Translation, it traps fat. So what can you do before bed to flip the switch? The answer lies in a simple, science-backed practice: activating your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode, before you sleep. This is not about taking supplements or spending money on gadgets. This is about harnessing the body's built-in ability to calm itself, lower cortisol, and signal your fat cells to release stored energy. Let's break down the physiology. Your adrenal glands produce cortisol according to signals from your brain. Specifically, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal NHPA axis. When you're under stretch, PA axis stays active. This is fine during the day, but if you enter the night with high HPA activity, your sleep quality drops, growth hormone release declines, and your metabolism shifts towards storing fat rather than burning it. Even worse, chronic evening stress keeps blood sugar elevated, leading to higher insulin, the fat storage hormone, right before your longest fasting period sleep. Here's where the before bed routine comes in. One of the most powerful ways to tell your body it's safe to rest is through controlled breathing. Specifically, slow, deep, diaphragmatic breathing combined with a relaxation ritual. When you take slow breaths, for example, inhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 7, exhaling for 8, you stimulate the vagus nerve. This sends a message to your heart rate to slow down, to your muscles to relax, and to your brain to switch gears into deep rest mode. Studies show this not only reduces cortisol, but also improves insulin sensitivity, a key factor in whether your body burns or stores fat at night. Pair this with a dark, cool, screen-free environment and you amplify the effect. Why? Darkness triggers melatonin release, which directly counterbalances cortisol. A cooler bedroom temperature signals your body that it's time to produce more brown fat activity, metabolically active fat that actually burns calories to generate heat. And when your stress hormones are low, this process runs far more efficiently. There's another element in timing your last meal. Finishing dinner at least 3 hours before bed allows insulin levels to fall. Low insulin plus low cortisol is the perfect hormonal combination for unlocking stored fat during sleep. In contrast, eating late at night, especially carb-heavy snacks, spikes both insulin and cortisol, locking fat in storage. Lowering nighttime cortisol is essential for optimal fat release and hormonal balance because cortisol plays a central role in regulating how your body manages energy, repairs tissues, and responds to stress. Cortisol naturally follows a daily rhythm called the diurnal curve, rising in the early morning to help you wake up and gradually falling throughout the day so that it reaches its lowest point at night. This drop at night is not just a coincidence. It is a biological design that allows your body to shift from alertness and fuel mobilization to repair and restoration. When cortisol levels stay elevated into the evening and night, the body interprets that as a sign of ongoing stress. This stress can be physical, such as illness or pain, or psychological, such as anxiety, worry, or exposure to stimulating activities late in the day. Elevated nighttime cortisol interferes with the secretion of melatonin, the hormone responsible for signaling your body that it's time to sleep. Without proper melatonin activity, the sleep cycle is disrupted, particularly the deep and REM stages, which are critical for hormonal balance, tissue repair, and memory consolidation. In addition to disturbing sleep quality, high cortisol at night directly impacts fat metabolism. Cortisol is catabolic, meaning it breaks down tissues to make energy available for the body. While this is beneficial in short bursts, chronic elevation prompts the body to store more fat, especially around the abdominal area, as a protective measure against perceived long-term stress. It also raises blood glucose levels, which in turn triggers more insulin release. Insulin is a storage hormone, and when combined with cortisol's influence, it shifts the body into a fat storage mode rather than fat burning mode. Even if a person is eating a healthy diet and exercising, this hormonal imbalance can prevent weight loss because the body is chemically instructed to conserve energy rather than use it. Over time, persistent high nighttime cortisol not only leads to weight gain but also affects other hormones such as leptin and ghrelin, which regulate hunger and satiety. This can cause increased nighttime cravings, creating a vicious cycle where poor eating patterns further raise cortisol and worsen sleep quality. Lowering nighttime cortisol allows the body to return to its natural metabolic rhythm. When cortisol drops appropriately in the evening, melatonin production rises, sleep deepens, and growth hormone release increases during the first part of the night. Growth hormone plays a key role in repairing muscles, regenerating tissues, and stimulating fat cells to release stored triglycerides for energy. This is the time when the body should be in a fasting and fat-burning state. Instead of storing, the body is breaking down stored fat to fuel repair processes and maintain blood sugar balance until morning. This is why a properly timed and balanced cortisol curve is so important. It is directly tied to how well the body utilizes its stored energy reserves. High nighttime cortisol is not only caused by emotional stress, but also by lifestyle factors that many people overlook. Consuming caffeine late in the day, eating large or high sugar meals right before bed, using bright screens for prolonged periods in the evening, and engaging in mentally stimulating activities can all send signals to the brain to keep the HPA axis active. Even light exposure from smartphones, TVs, or overhead lighting delays the production of melatonin and indirectly keeps cortisol from falling. Another hidden cause is late-night exercise, especially intense workouts, which raise cortisol as part of the body's stress and recovery mechanism. While exercise is beneficial overall, doing it too close to bedtime can interfere with the natural hormonal transition into nighttime rest mode. Physiologically, lowering nighttime cortisol can be achieved through simple, consistent practices that signal safety to the brain and body. Slow breathing techniques, gentle stretching, meditation, and spending the last hour before bed away from screens and dim lighting can help shift the body into parasympathetic dominance. This shift is critical because the parasympathetic nervous system signals that it's safe to rest, digest, and repair, which encourages cortisol to drop naturally. Over time, repeating these behaviors each night conditions the body to expect and respond to these cues, making it easier to maintain a healthy cortisol rhythm. The result is not better sleep, but improved hormonal harmony across the board, allowing the body to release stored fat more proficient while protecting lean muscle mass and supporting long-term metabolic health. Evening stress and poor sleep habits keep the HPA axis overactive, trapping FANG fat because the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis is the body's central command system for managing stress and regulating hormone release. When functioning normally, this system responds to short-term stress by increasing cortisol to mobilize energy, enhance alertness, and prepare the body for action, then gradually winds down once the stressor is gone. However, in the modern world, the stressors don't turn off when the sun goes down. Instead of winding down, many people extend the day's mental and physical strain into the night through work deadlines, late-night arguments, financial worries, or even overstimulating entertainment. This constant activation of the HPA axis signals the adrenal glands to keep producing cortisol long past the point it should be tapering. The body doesn't differentiate between a real threat and a perceived one, so it responds the same way to a stressful email or a frightening news story as it would to physical danger, maintaining a state of heightened alertness when it should be preparing for rest. The problem with an overactive HPA axis in the evening is that it disrupts the body's ability to enter restorative sleep stages, particularly slow-wave sleep and REM sleep. These stages are crucial for lowering cortisol, balancing other hormones, and repairing tissues. When sleep is fragmented or shallow due to persistent stress signals, the brain misses out on the deep neurological rest it needs, and the body misses the opportunity to regulate hormones such as insulin, leptin, and ghrelin. Elevated cortisol in the evening also interferes with melatonin production, which makes it harder to fall asleep, often leading to a cycle of lying in bed alert and restless. Over time, this poor sleep pattern becomes a trigger in itself, teaching the body to associate bedtime with wakefulness and worry, further reinforcing HPA axis overactivity. From a metabolic perspective, high nighttime cortisol tells the body that resources need to be conserved for survival. This means holding onto fat stores, particularly visceral fat around the abdomen, because in a stress state, the body prioritizes quick access energy reserves. Core increases gluconeogenesis, the production of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, which keeps blood sugar elevated. Elevated blood sugar triggers insulin release, and insulin is the body's primary fat storage hormone. Together, high cortisol and high insulin form a biochemical lock on fat stores, making it extremely difficult to burn fat efficiently even during fasting periods like overnight sleep. Worse, the presence of these hormones in elevated amounts late in the day disrupts the natural metabolic rhythm that is designed to shift toward fat burning during the night. Poor sleep habits amplify this problem. Staying up late under bright light exposure from screens delays melatonin release, which not only delays sleep onset, but also allows cortisol to stay higher for longer. Going to bed at irregular times confuses the body's circadian clock, and when the circadian rhythm is out of sync, cortisol release patterns become erratic. Eating late at night is another common habit that contributes to HPA axis overactivity. Digesting food, especially large or high sugar meals, signals the body to stay metabolically active, and in many cases, it can lead to nighttime acid reflux or discomfort that further disrupts sleep. These disruptions cause micro-arousals throughout the night, each of which can trigger small spikes in cortisol, keeping the HPA axis engaged even while sleeping. Even certain types of evening exercise can contribute to this problem. While physical activity is generally beneficial, intense workouts too close to bedtime raise cortisol, body temperature, and heart rate, delaying the body's transition into rest mode. Additionally, mental stimulation from competitive games, problem-solving activities, or heated discussions can have the effect as emotional stress, sending signals to the hypothalamus to stay alert and continue the stress response. In other words, the brain's perception of stimulation or threat, whether physical, emotional, or mental, is enough to keep the HPA axis running. Once the HPA axis becomes chronically overactive in the evening, the body's entire hormonal landscape shifts toward a pattern that favors energy storage over energy release. Fat cells become more insulin sensitive in terms of storage, meaning they more readily take up and hold onto fatty acids. Muscle tissue, on the other hand, becomes less insulin sensitive, reducing its ability to take in glucose for energy and leaving more glucose circulating in the bloodstream. This shift not only traps fat, but also sets the stage for long-term metabolic issues such as insulin resistance. The combination of stress-driven eating, poor quality sleep, and disrupted circadian rhythms becomes a reinforcing loop where cortisol never fully drops to its natural nighttime low, and fat stores remain locked away from use slow. Deep diaphragmatic breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system before bed by directly engaging the body's natural relaxation response and signaling that it is safe to transition out of the stress-driven fight or flight mode dominated by the sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is often referred to as the rest and digest branch because it governs processes that allow the body to recover, repair, and conserve energy. When a person is under stress, breathing tends to become shallow and rapid, primarily engaging the upper chest and neck muscles. This pattern is associated with increased heart rate, elevated cortisol, and ongoing activation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. By contrast, slow deliberate diaphragmatic breathing shifts the primary movement of respiration to the lower abdomen, involving the diaphragm fully. This deep, steady rhythm stimulates the vagus nerve, which runs from the brainstem down through the chest and abdomen, acting as a communication superhighway for parasympathetic activation. When the vagus nerve is stimulated through deep breathing, heart rate variability increases, blood pressure tends to drop, and muscle tension decreases. These physiological changes signal the brain that the environment is safe, allowing stress hormones like cortisol to begin declining naturally. This is especially important before bed, as lowering cortisol at night sets stage for melatonin release, deeper sleep, and the metabolic shift toward fat burning. Research has shown that even a few minutes of slow breathing, often at a pace about 6 breaths per minute, can significantly reduce sympathetic nervous system activity. The key is not just the speed of the breath, but the depth and evenness of inhalation and exhalation. Longer exhalations, in particular, are strongly linked with parasympathetic activation because they influence baroreceptors in the heart and blood vessels that help regulate blood pressure and stress responses. One popular and effective method is the 4-7-8 breathing technique, where you away from processed foods, inhale through the nose for 4, hold for 7, and exhale slowly through the mouth for a count of 8. This technique combines the benefits of deep breathing with a meditative focus that draws attention away from anxious or racing thoughts, further reducing mental stimulation. Another approach is coherent breathing, which involves breathing in for 5 seconds and out for 5 seconds, creating a steady, balanced rhythm that synchronizes the cardiovascular and respiratory systems. Both methods help reset the autonomic nervous system, moving it away from stress-driven patterns and into a state conducive to rest and recovery. In addition to the neurological and hormonal benefits, diaphragmatic breathing also affects circulation and oxygen delivery. Deep breaths allow the lower portions of the lungs to fill more completely, improving gas exchange and oxygenating the blood more efficiently. This enhanced oxygen supports tissue repair and energy production during sleep, while the steady removal of carbon dioxide helps maintain optimal blood pH, reducing physiological stress signals. Over time, practicing this type of breathing before bed can condition the body to associate it with relaxation and sleep readiness, making it a powerful tool for those struggling with insomnia or difficulty winding down. Another benefit of slow breathing before bed is its impact on heart rate and body temperature, both which need to drop slightly for the onset of deep sleep. As parasympathetic activity rises, the heart rate naturally slows and peripheral blood vessels dilate, allowing heat to dissipate. This cooling effect aligns with the body's natural circadian signals that prepare it for rest. In contrast, when cortisol and sympathetic activity remain high, the body tends to stay warmer and more alert, making it harder to fall asleep and stay asleep, while breathing exercises can be done anywhere. Their effectiveness before bed is maximized when combined with an environment that supports relaxation. Dimming lights, minimizing noise, and avoiding electronic devices in the last hour before sleep help prevent the reactivation of the stress response. Pairing deep breathing with gentle stretching, meditation, or calming music can further deepen the parasympathetic state. This creates a layered effect, where multiple relaxation cues work together to lower cortisol, quiet the mind, and prepare the body for restorative rest. Consistently using diaphragmatic breathing in a nightly routine strengthens the body's ability to transition smoothly into parasympathetic dominance, ensuring that hormonal conditions favor not only high-quality sleep, but also the release of stored fat and the repair of tissues overnight. Darkness, cool temperature, and screen-free time boost melatonin and counter cortisol by working in harmony with the body's natural circadian rhythm, which is deeply influenced by light, temperature, and sensory input. Melatonin is the hormone that signals to your body that it's time to sleep, and it is primarily triggered by darkness. When light, especially blue light from screens and lids, hits the retina, it sends a message to the brain's suprachiasmatic nucleus to suppress melatonin production. This is an adaptive mechanism in the daytime to keep you alert, but in the evening it works against the natural drop in cortisol that should occur. By reducing light exposure, particularly from artificial sources, the brain receives the cue that night has fallen, allowing melatonin levels to rise and cortisol to decline. This hormonal shift prepares the body to enter deeper stages of sleep, where repair and fat-burning processes are optimized. The absence of light doesn't just help you fall asleep faster. It also improves sleep quality by sustaining melatonin release throughout the night, which in turn keeps nighttime cortisol lower and prevents stress-related microawakenings. Temperature plays a similarly critical role in signaling the body that it's time to rest. The human body naturally experiences a drop in core temperature in the evening as part of the circadian cycle. This cooling effect is a biological trigger for sleep onset. A cool environment, as typically between 60 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit 9 degrees Celsius, helps facilitate this process by encouraging vasodilation in the skin, which releases heat from the body's core. When sleeping and that is too warm, the body has to work harder to lower its temperature, delaying sleep onset and reducing time spent in deep sleep. Cooler temperatures also work in synergy with melatonin production, as melatonin itself slightly lowers body temperature. This combined effect helps sustain a restful state, suppress unnecessary cortisol spikes during the night, and encourage metabolic processes like fat oxidation, which are most efficient when both cortisol and insulin are low. Screen time is another crucial factor in creating an environment where melatonin can rise and cortisol can fall. Screens emit blue light that closely mimics daylight wavelengths, directly interfering with the pineal gland's production of melatonin. Beyond the light exposure, the mental stimulation from watching videos, scrolling through social media, or responding to messages keeps the brain's alert systems engaged. This cognitive engagement can activate the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, keeping cortisol elevated even if the body is otherwise physically still. By stepping away from screens at least an hour before bed, you remove both the visual light cue that suppresses melatonin and the mental triggers that sustain stress hormone production. Instead, engaging in low-stimulation activities such as reading a physical book under dim light, listening to calming music, or practicing relaxation techniques reinforces the brain's association between evening hours and restfulness. Darkness, cool temperature, and screen-free time are not isolated tools but interdependent elements that create an optimal sleep environment. When all three are present, staying away enforce each other's effects on hormonal regulation. Darkness signals the brain to start the sleep preparation process. Cool temperatures accelerate the drop in core body temperature that helps initiate sleep, and screen-free time reduces both light interference and mental stimulation that could otherwise raise cortisol. The combination not only accelerates the transition into sleep but also maintains low nighttime cortisol levels, allowing fats to release stored triglycerides for energy rather than holding on to them under perceived stress conditions. This environment also supports the natural rise in growth hormone that occurs shortly after sleep onset, which is vital for tissue repair, muscle preservation, and long-term metabolic health. Even subtle deviations from these conditions can significantly disrupt the sleep cycle and hormonal balance. For example, exposure to even small amounts of light during the night, such as from a phone charging light, alarm clock, or street lamp, can partially suppress melatonin and raise cortisol levels. Similarly, a bedroom that is too warm can increase nighttime awakenings, each of which is associated with brief spikes in cortisol that interrupt fat burning and repair processes. Using blackout curtains, stating the thermostat or using fans for a cooler sleeping environment, and developing a nightly habit of powering down devices all contribute to an internal environment that promotes hormonal balance. Over time, these practices can help retrain the circadian rhythm, making away from processed foods and it easier up the body for the naturally lower cortisol at maintain high in qualities without on external sleep. 3. The last finishing meal at least before sleep lowers insulin and enhances fat burning, because it allows the body to complete the bulk of digestion and transition into a hormonal state that favors energy release rather than energy storage. When you eat, especially meals containing carbohydrates, your blood glucose rises, prompting the pancreas to release insulin. Insulin's main job is to help shuttle glucose into cells for energy use or store it as glycogen in the liver and muscles. Once glycogen stores are full, excess glucose is converted into fat and stored in adipose tissue. while insulin is present in the bloodstream. Fat burning is essentially put on hold because the body prioritizes using glucose for fuel and storing any surplus as fat. This is why eating too close to bedtime can interfere with the natural overnight fat burning phase. Elevated insulin at night means the body remains in storage mode rather than tapping into stored energy reserves. In a healthy circadian rhythm, insulin sensitivity is highest in the morning and gradually decreases as the day progresses. This means that night eating often leads to higher blood sugar spikes and more prolonged insulin release compared to the same meal consumed earlier in the day. By finishing the last meal at least 3 hours before bed, you give insulin levels time to drop to baseline, allowing the body to switch into a fasted state. In this state, the body begins to rely on stored glycogen and, as the night progresses, stored fat for energy. This process, called lipolysis, is aided by low insulin and low cortisol, creating the perfect hormonal environment for fat mobilization. The combination of a fasting window before sleep and the natural overnight fast while sleeping can extend the fat burning period significantly, especially when paired with good sleep quality that promotes optimal growth hormone release. Another benefit of avoiding late night meals is its effect on digestion and sleep quality. Digesting food is an active metabolic process that requires blood flow to the gastrointestinal tract, increased core body temperature, and muscular activity in the digestive system. When this process overlaps with the body's natural attempt to lower core temperature and enter a parasympathetic rest state, there is a mismatch in signals. The result is often lighter, more fragmented sleep, which can in turn raise cortisol levels and blunt fat-burning potential. For people prone to acid reflux or indigestion, eating right before bed increases the likelihood of nighttime discomfort, which further disrupts restorative sleep and increases nighttime stress hormone production. Allowing a gap between the last meal and bedtime gives the digestive system time to process the food while the body is still in an upright position, reducing the risk of reflux and supporting deeper, more uninterrupted sleep. Late night eating can also interfere with circadian alignment of the liver and digestive organs. The body operates on multiple circadian clocks, not just the central one in the brain, and the digestive system's clock is heavily influenced by feeding times. Eating late sends signals to these peripheral clocks that it's still daytime, which can cause misalignment with the central circadian rhythm. This misalignment disrupts not only digestion but also the timing of hormone release, including cortisol and melatonin. Over time, this can lead to a flattened cortisol curve, meaning cortisol doesn't drop low enough at night or rise appropriately in the morning, both of which hinder metabolic health. By consistently stopping food intake several hours before bed, the feeding fasting signals sent to the digestive system are more closely aligned with the natural light-dark cycle, supporting better overall hormonal balance. The metabolic advantage of an extended overnight fast goes beyond simply using stored fat for energy. During this fasting period, the body also engages in processes like autophagy, where damaged cells and cellular waste are broken down and recycled. This contributes to overall metabolic efficiency and reduces inflammation, both of which are important for long-term fat loss and health. Insulin must be low for autophagy to occur efficiently, and late-night eating delays this drop, effectively shortening the repair window available during sleep. In contrast, ending the last meal earlier maximizes the overlap between deep sleep, high growth hormone levels, and low insulin, creating ideal conditions for both repair and fat loss. The timing of the last meal also has an indirect effect on appetite regulation. Eating late can disrupt leptin, the hormone that signals fullness, and ghrelin, the hormone that signals hunger. Normally, leptin rises during the night to suppress appetite and allow interrupted sleep. However, elevated insulin and ongoing digestion from a late meal can interfere with this process, leading to nighttime hunger or early morning cravings. By completing the last meal well before bed, leptin signaling remains intact, making it easier to maintain a consistent eating schedule and avoid unnecessary late-night snacking that drives up both insulin and cortisol at the wrong time of day. Consistent nightly routine reprograms the metabolism for efficient fat use by aligning hormonal rhythms, circadian signals, and metabolic processes so they work together instead of against each other. The human body thrives on predictability, especially when it comes to sleep and recovery. When bedtime, pre-sleep activities, and waking times follow a consistent pattern, the brain begins to anticipate these events and adjusts hormone release accordingly. The hypothalamus, which governs the circadian clock, learns to prepare the body for sleep at a predictable time by lowering cortisol, increasing melatonin, and shifting into parasympathetic dominance. This predictability not only improves the speed of falling asleep, but also enhances the depth and restorative quality of sleep, which is essential for optimal fat metabolism. Deep, high-quality sleep promotes growth hormone release, which works in tandem with low nighttime insulin to encourage fat cells to release stored energy. A consistent routine also strengthens the link between behavioral cues and physiological responses. For example, if dimming screen lighting, free time, and relaxation techniques are performed nightly at the same time, these cues become signals to the body that sleep is approaching. Over time, the nervous system responds more quickly to these cues, shortening the transition from alertness to rest. This faster shift into parasympathetic mode allows cortisol to drop earlier in the night, extending the period of low stress hormone levels during sleep. The longer the window of low cortisol and insulin, the more time the body spends in a hormonal state favorable for fat oxidation rather than storage. In contrast, inconsistent routines can cause cortisol to remain elevated for longer, delaying melatonin release and reducing the time spent in deep sleep stages metabolically. Consistency supports the synchronization of peripheral clocks in organs like the liver, pancreas, and adipose tissue with the central circadian clock in the brain. These peripheral clocks regulate metabolic processes such as glucose handling, fat storage, and energy release. When routines are erratic, these clocks can become misaligned, causing the body to process food inefficiently, store more fat, and burn less during fasting periods. A regular nightly schedule aligns these metabolic clocks so that fat burning is prioritized during the night and energy utilization is optimized during the day. This synchronization also helps regulate appetite-related hormones like leptin and ghrelin, reducing late-night cravings and supporting healthier eating patterns during waking hours. A steady routine impacts the autonomic nervous system as well, helping to maintain a balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic activity. The sympathetic nervous system is necessary for daytime activity, but its prolonged activation into the night is a major reason why fat remains stored. Through repetition, a consistent routine conditions the body to switch to parasympathetic dominance at a certain time each evening, signaling safety, relaxation, and readiness for metabolic repair. This learned response reduces nighttime awakenings, which are often accompanied by spikes in cortisol that interrupt fat burning and growth hormone release. Fewer awakenings mean more time in uninterrupted deep sleep, allowing the body to stay in a prolonged fat-utilizing state. Another critical factor is that a predictable nightly pattern minimizes exposure to late-night triggers that can disrupt hormonal balance, such as irregular eating, screen time, or stimulating activities. By consciously avoiding these at the same times each night, the body avoids sending mixed signals to the endocrine system. This consistent avoidance helps keep insulin and cortisol low when they should be, reinforcing the body's ability to tap into stored fat as an energy source during the overnight fast. In addition, the regular timing of sleep onset and wake-up supports stable morning cortisol peaks, which are important for energy, alertness, and maintaining a healthy metabolic rate throughout the day. This healthy cortisol rhythm, with a clear peak in the morning and a low point at night, is a hallmark of a well-regulated metabolism that can efficiently use fat for fuel over weeks and months. The cumulative effect of a consistent nightly routine is a rewiring of the body's internal timing systems. The circadian rhythm becomes stronger, the hormonal fluctuations between day and night become more pronounced in a healthy way, and the metabolic machinery that governs energy balance becomes more efficient. Fat cells become more responsive to signals that trigger lipolyses, muscle cells become better at taking in and using glucose during the day, and the body learns to rely more heavily on fat for energy during the night. This adaptation not only supports gradual and sustainable fat loss but also builds resilience against stress, induced weight gain by keeping the HP axis responsive and well-regulated rather than chronically overactive.